Good afternoon, everybody. The Committee on Finance will come to order. Today, we will be hearing one bill, House Bill 1600, which is the executive budget. Because, welcome everyone. This is the first hybrid hearing we'll be having. So if I could ask for your cooperation, what we're gonna do is, this will be the test how we do all the other hearings. For all the other hearings, because we are still trying to figure out how to deal with the combination of in-person and Zoom testifier. And because of the limited number of seating in the conference room, we will be staging the in-person testifiers and bringing them in the conference room. Thankfully for this hearing, we have just as many seats as there are testifiers. In fact, there are more seats than we thought. So, we're very thankful that for this first budget hearing, many individuals decided to at least continue to participate via Zoom, but we still invite public to come and testify in person if you feel that that was what you want to do. So we want to just thank everyone for being here in person and participating in this hearing. So how we will do it is we will be taking Zoom testifiers first. And then after the Zoom testifiers, we will go for live testimony. The reason for that is we're using this as a practice for other hearings, and that's how we'll be running it. Okay, so with that, first up, it is Gwen Lau.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The authority stands on its written testimony in support.
Hold
Thank
on,
you.
Ms. Lau, we have some sound issues.
We can't hear you.
Test. Can you hear me now? Test. Test.
I think that's in. Ms. Lau, can you check the audio on your side?
Test.
Let me come back to you, and then maybe we're just checking if it's a global issue or just within your office. So let me call the next person. Deheard. Director Wada.
Hello, Chair. Riker Wada from the Department of Human Resources
No,
Development.
even
Can you hear me
Director
okay?
Wada is. We have a issue. Wait, hold on just a sec. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, aloha, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Nope, still not working. Okay, see, technical difficulties on our side. Yeah. Okay, testing. Director
Yes.
Wada, can you? Yes.
Can you hear
Oh,
me?
yay. Okay. Yay. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Director.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Riker Wada for the Department of Human Resources Development. You have our written testimony, and there are 5 asks from Deheard in the budget this year. I would like to highlight 2. One is our second ask, and it's for in HRD 102, and we're asking for 2 permanent HRS positions, and this is to assist with our classification branch. Currently, our classification branch, we did lose positions over the past couple of years, and so we're looking to reestablish those positions. We're running at about 60% capacity, and it's hindering our ability to help the rest of the executive branch. So we are asking for those positions. Our third ask, number 3, also in HRD 102, is an additional amount of money for an integrated workers' compensation claims management system. And this is in lieu of a much larger ask that we had asked for in previous years. And we had actually slated our special fund for. And so instead we've chopped down the amount, and we're looking for a much smaller amount this year. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. And then now we'll go back to Ms. Lau.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The authority stands on its written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we're going to take one individual out of order, and that is DCAB, because we have the language interpreter here. And then so after the testimony, we can relieve the interpreter. So we have Christine Pagano for Kirby Shaw.
Recording in progress.
Aloha and good afternoon, Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita, Committee on Finance. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. The Disability Communication Access Board, we have one position that we are requesting to please reinstate and provide the funding for. The Communication Access Specialist is the title of that position. The Communication Access Specialist is essential for the deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, and speech and cognitive disability, people with disabilities. That population, there are many people that do not necessarily help that population or focus on them. And that population needs our services. They need access to our state programs and services. That position as the Communication Access Specialist, they educate and provide training to many state entities and agencies and educate those about access and technology, how to have access to technology as well. Also, they provide state certification for interpreters, the testing. That testing credential for interpreters is helpful for making sure that we have ADA qualified interpreters in state. For example, today, we have an interpreter here who has a state credential. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to provide access to all captions and interpreter today. Thank you for the opportunity, and DCAB is here for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Executive Office and Early Learning.
Aloha Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita and members of the Committee on Finance. UEL stands on its written testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Executive Office and Aging.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Caroline Kadira with the Executive Office on Aging. Our budget request is found under HTH 904. EOA is requesting 1.5 million for Kapuna Care, 110,000 for 2 full-time equivalents for our long-term care ombudsman program, and a neutral conversion of our data research analyst position to permanent full-time, which is currently temporary. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DONR.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in hybrid. It's looking good. We stand on a written testimony with a couple of tweaks to our budget. I just want to highlight a couple of things, if I may. Our budget is at the core of it is a request to restore positions that we've lost over the COVID period, and so we actually have about 50 positions in various categories, a dozen that we have but are not funded, 18 that have no ceiling, but they are existing, but we need the ceiling increase to be able to fund them, and 18 that we're requesting to be restored. Of note, we have in LNR 804, Water Commission, we have 4 positions that show up as new, but they were previously authorized. That they just got unfunded in the interim period. And we have a new request for significant new position numbers for historic preservation in LNR 802. That's to really try to address the backlog in a much more systematic way. Our other request is to increase our ceilings in some key areas. We, as you know, we're doing our best to do our part to fund our work, but we have to have authorization from you to spend that money and in the form of ceiling increases. So we have the 12 million ceiling request for state parks, 802, and 3 million ceiling request for our land division. Thank you very much, and I'm available for questions.
Chair case is Miss Cynthia Gomes testifying separately from you, or is that
She's
part
here
of-
to answer questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is HTDC.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Len Higashi from Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We stand on our written testimony in support with the requested amendment, and we are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is University of Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. University of Hawaii stands on its testimony in support. Our testimony outlines the university's budget request, which includes, for the most part, restoration of $42 million of general funds that was reduced last year in the budget, as well as supporting a number of initiatives to fund workforce development that the university can participate for the larger part of the state. It largely benefits the healthcare industry, cyber technology, and education workforce. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next up is HHSC.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. HHSC will stand on its written testimony in support requesting amendments, and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Kat Awakuni Cologne on behalf of DCCA. You have our written testimony supporting the governor's budget bill. We do have a few priorities that I wanted to highlight. The first 5 items included in our priorities list are positions for DFI in CCA 104 and positions for the Professional and Vocational Licensing Division, CCA 105. And those positions are very needed for new programs that have been given to those divisions and or to address significant backlog. In addition, I just wanted to highlight that the governor's message number 11, just sent down earlier this week, includes a ceiling appropriation for the Public Utilities Commission so that they might be able to effectuate Act 75. And I thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is BNF.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita. I'm Craig Hirai, the Director of Finance. You have our written testimony in support of this measure, and we are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Department of Human Services.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Kathy Betts for the Department of Human Services. First of all, I'd just like to thank this committee for your continued support of DHS throughout the pandemic. As you know, we've seen our caseloads exponentially increase with positions drastically cut over the last 2 years. Our supplemental budget requests emphasize the need for our continued investment in our workforce, as well as IT modernization. Those tools, our human resources, and our investment in technology are truly the foundation of this department's ability to serve those most in need, and they carried us through the pandemic with some success. So I'll stand on the remainder of our written testimony. Just want to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is PSD.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Max Santani, Department of Public Safety. The department would stand on our written testimony in support of this bill. But we would like to point out that the funding is needed to support our over 3,000 permanent positions. We're also asking to restore funding for 291 uniform and civilian unfunded positions, and to reestablish 20 deputy sheriff positions that was abolished at that last session. Funding would also include our CFP projects that we need to move forward. Be available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Local Food Coalition.
Oh, good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Kendall Matsuyoshi, on behalf of the Local Food Coalition. We'll stand on a written testimony in support of the bill, specifically as it relates to the University of Hawaii at Manoa's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Hunt Development Group.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Myung-Oh here on behalf of Hunt Development Group. We're in support of the measure as it relates to CIP item 35 under BED 150. It is all part of Hunt's and HCD's Master Development Plan in Kalailoa. Definitely will help the improvement and electrical and communications infrastructure for continued economic development and community opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is the Governor's Office.
Thank you. This is Linda Chu Takayama. I am representing the Governor's Office, and we stand on our written testimony.
Thank you very much. Next up is State Foundation and Culture and the Arts.
Aloha, Chair Luke, members of the committee. SFCA supports the executive budget, and I'd like to highlight a little request that is to reestablish 2 positions funded from federal and special funds, that there is no additional budget appropriation ask in our request. That's for a deputy director position to run the internal operations of the agency. So the outward focus of the executive director can be developing partnerships, generating revenue, and working with the visitor industry. The second position we're requesting is a museum director for the Hawaii State Art Museum, as HISAM has no director position. So mahalo, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up it is Partners in Care. Okay, next up is Hawaii Public Housing Authority.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, Ben Park, on behalf of the Hawaii Public Housing Authority, we stand in support of our testimony. Thank you.
Next up is Manuel Kololo'io.
Aloha, Chair Luke, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Aloha, Finance Chair Sylvia Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and committee representatives. I testify requesting support for HB 1600, with funding being provided to the DLNR in account LNR 906 specifically for the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, which reinstates funding previously awarded and adds a cultural resource position eliminated during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ku'ula Shrine of Haki'oawa thanks you. The Kamohi'o Bay Shrine of Vana carved and Pohaku images, and Kappa on exhibit at the Bishop Museum thanks you. The Ads Quarry of Pu'umo'iwi thanks you. The petroglyphs of Ahupu Iki thanks you. The Palupalu o Kanaloa of Ale Ale, Pu'ukua'e, and Kaho'olawe Li'i thanks you. The Limu Lipoa of Honokanainai thanks you. The Nai'a and Kohola, playing and resting in Honokanai'a Bay thanks you. The Honu of Kiana Keiki thanks you. The Falling Kupe'e of Honoko'a thanks you. The Sands of Ki'i thanks you. The Beached Whale Carcass and Iwi Kohola of Kanapo Bay thanks you. The storied navigational places of Kealaikahiki and Moa'ula Iki thanks you. The prehistoric basalt adze of Kaho'olawe found on Napuka Atoll in the Tuamotu Archipelago thanks you. La'aiokaka, where the recovery of war shark torpedoes by Uncle John Kelly of Black Point, Kupiki Pikio, was considered extremely important in order that cause of failure might be determined by U.S. Admirals Lockwood and Momsen for Pacific Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz. Thanks you. Kalai o Kamahoa Li'i. Thanks you.
Thank you. Next up, it is State Council on Developmental Disabilities.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Council Committee members. My name is Daintree Bartoldas, Executive Administrator for Hawaii State Council on Developmental Disabilities. We stand in support of this measure, especially page 39, item 24, our budget. We do not have any additional requests. We will be putting in a request to increase our ceiling because we did get an increase in our federal funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, it is Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke and members of the committee. The Department of Health supports HB 1600. General priorities for the department include the restoration of positions and funding that were eliminated during the COVID pandemic economic uncertainty over the past couple of years, and the resources to be able to apply lessons learned from the pandemic and the environmental crisis. You have our written testimony for the remainder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Office of Enterprise Technology Services.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Doug Murdoch from Enterprise Technology Services. We'll stand on our written testimony in support of the bill and ask for your consideration of additional amounts listed in GM7. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. the Comptroller, Kurt Otaguro.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. This is Muling Silliman. I'm the Business Management Officer on behalf of the State Comptroller. We stand on our written testimony in support, but would like to offer some comments from the Comptroller as it relates to the restoration of deleted positions and funding of defunded but authorized positions. So in our budget, we are requesting for the restoration of 25 deleted positions and about $817,000 in funding. Approximately half of these positions are from our Central Services Division. These are the custodial, grounds, and R&M positions. The rest are critical admin support positions from ETS and our Personnel Office. We're also seeking funding of our authorized but defunded positions. These are from the Public Works Division. Of the 12 defunded, they're asking for funding for 10 positions back, approximately $603,000 for engineers, architects, and building inspectors. All of these are critical resources for the division as they handle and manage CIP projects statewide. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. Okay, if not, Hawaii State Public Library System.
Aloha, Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita and committee members. Stacey Aldridge, State Librarian in the Hawaii State Public Library System. I too would like to thank you for the opportunity for the hybrid model for testifying today and commend the staff for all the work they're doing behind the scenes to make this so smooth. We stand on our written testimony with support of House Bill 1600, and we thank you very much for this opportunity to testify. Aloha.
Thank you very much. Next up is Kapolei Chamber of Commerce.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Karen Polk. I'm the Executive Director for the Kapolei Chamber of Commerce, and we'd like to stand on our testimony in support of House Bill 1600, specifically CIP item number 35, BED 150. Bringing this needed infrastructure into Kalaeloa is a much needed addition to the west side. As you know, we have extended population growth projected in the coming years, and having this opportunity for affordable housing as well as economic development in this community will help match our projected growth, bringing more jobs and opportunities to the west side. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next up is Hawaii Tourism Authority.
Aloha, Chair. The Hawaii Tourism Authority stands on its written testimony in support of HB 1600. We stand by to answer any questions that you may have. Mahalo, Chair, Vice Chair, and members.
Thank you very much. Next up is HCDA.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Craig Nakamura on behalf of Hawaii Community Development Authority. We submitted our testimony in support of House Bill 1600, but I wanted to just highlight two CIP projects that we have. Support for CIP item number 34, which is a public safety required repair of the Fisherman's Wharf bulkhead in Kewalo Basin Harbor. And the second is CIP item number 35, which is the Saratoga Avenue Electrical and Communication Infrastructure Improvement Project. That project will bring much needed and reliable utilities and communication service to the Kalaeloa downtown area. I'm available for questions, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up is Rachel Tujong.
Hello, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Rachel Chung. I'm currently a student at the University of Hawaii in Manoa. I was a former bedside nurse for 15 years, and I'm just here I stand on my written testimony, but I want to note that I oppose the funding that's being allocated to the expansion for OCCC facility. 59% of the people currently at the OCCC facility are awaiting trial, so they haven't even gone into pretrial yet. And this was as of January 2022, when the Omicron outbreak was at its height. So these people are already at risk because they're in an institution, and also it's disproportionately affecting people that are already marginalized. So what I would like to see is that funding be directed toward education and healthcare services. The state of Hawaii has a state-of-the-art medical facilities that serve both the people that live in the state and also the people that serve in the armed forces across the Indo-Pacific region. And I would love to see those programs supported instead of more prison spaces. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up is Department of Defense.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the House Finance Committee. The Department of Defense stands on its written testimony and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is ACLU.
Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, committee members, Carrie Ann Shirota on behalf of the ACLU of Hawaii. We offer comments and want to thank you for the opportunity for allowing the public to weigh in. As you know, the ACLU is committed to transforming our criminal legal system, and we're respectfully requesting that you withhold the $15 million capital project that's being requested by the Department of Public Safety, listed as item number 3. Rather than spending more money on building and expanding jails and prisons, we ask that we invest in proven strategies for decarceration and alternatives to incarceration. Other states that have invested in reform from the front end of the system, pretrial bail reform, to the tail end, have reduced their population successfully while also saving taxpayer dollars without compromising public safety. And I'd like to highlight New Jersey decreased their population by 8,000 individuals. New York decreased their incarcerated population by 18,000 individuals. And in 6 years, California reduced their incarcerated population by almost 40,000 persons. When you consider how much money is being spent on incarceration per person per day, which is $219, multiply that, that's about almost $80,000 a year. And in comparison, we spend less than $10,000 to educate a child in our public schools. I just want to highlight again that jails and prisons are poor investments when you consider the costs and the high recidivism rates. In Hawaii, there's recidivism rates of over 50%. Moreover, while the full cost to build a new jail is estimated to be close to $1 billion, the amount of construction pales in amount to the operational costs in the future. So I ask that you as lawmakers, let your legacy be more investments in education and build people, build communities, not bigger prisons. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up is ADC. Okay, if not, next up is Hawaii State Energy Office.
Aloha Chair Luke, aloha Vice Chair Yamashita and members of the committee. The Energy Office submitted testimony in support of HB 1600 and would just like to note in our testimony, we have two main groups of requests. One is for mission critical positions and funding. Since FY19, the Energy Office has been reduced about 30% in budget and staff, while contributing about $2.4 million from the Energy Security Special Fund to the budget shortfall last year. And then we're also asking for access to additional funding sources through the use of the Energy Security Special Fund to start situating the office to pursue Infrastructure Act dollars, which is especially timely today with given where we are with energy prices, electricity, gas, and transportation. So we thank you for your favorable consideration of our ask and are available for any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up is Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy Attorney General Randall Nishiyama. We have provided our written comments and I am available for your questions.
Thank you very much. Lastly, it is Maui Health System.
Thank you. This is Mike Rembis, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Maui Health System is requesting appropriations of $11 million in general funds. Maui Health System is a true community hospital system and the only acute care hospitals providing care for Maui County and Lanai. Our request continues to be reduced each year from the $38 million 5 years ago to only $11 million in general funds this year. We've been able to achieve this by increasing quality, reducing our expenses substantially, increasing our revenue, and recruiting physicians and nurses. We believe this $11 million request is what's needed to safely continue to provide care for the residents of Maui during these COVID circumstances. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all the testifiers on Zoom. Did I miss anybody on Zoom before we go to in-person? Okay. Robert. Oh, Robert Merce. Okay.
Chair Luke.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, thank you for allowing me to testify by Zoom. I accidentally signed up to testify in person. My testimony is very short. I'd simply like you to, as others have requested, to delete the $15 million that the State Department of Public Safety is asking for to continue the planning of the new jail. The new jail is scheduled to cost $1 billion. We've already spent at least $10 million in the planning so far. I was chair of the HCR 85 task force on vice chair of the HCR task force on prison reform. We recommended very, very, very strongly against building the new jail in the way that it is now being planned. The Hawaii Correctional Oversight Commission is opposed to the jail as now planned. I hope you will join with us in saying that this is not the jail the people of Hawaii want or need. It's too big, it's too expensive, and it's been poorly planned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before we move to in-person testimony, anyone else who would like to testify via Zoom? Just gonna wait a few seconds. If not, let's proceed with in-person testimony. First up, we have the Superintendent of Education.
Aloha Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Keith Hayashi, Interim Superintendent, Hawaii Department of Education. The department stands by on its testimony in support of House Bill 1600 with 2 points to highlight. First, the department's top priority in the budget as introduced involves the restoration of large lump sum cuts instituted under a different fiscal climate. With the improved fiscal condition, we would ask for the full restoration of those cuts. Doing so will provide reliable and predictable funding for public schools that is needed in order to focus on responding to students' social, emotional, and academic needs while maintaining a safe school and work environment. Second, we stand ready to continue to collaborate with the legislature to ensure that the final draft of the budget enables the department to execute the budget in a manner that complies with federal maintenance of effort requirements from the elementary and secondary school emergency relief legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Mr. Tom, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. The department is present just providing comments for House Bill 1600, respectfully requesting the committee consider the governor's message from February 23rd, 2022, addressing career criminal unit for all the different counties around the state, as well as victim witness Kapolei services. These two programs were actually zeroed out. So the department is just requesting the base budget just be replaced back into the Attorney General's, aware that last year when it was zeroed out that we did have a lot of financial constraints. So we'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Department of Taxation, Director Choi.
Chair, Vice Chair, Isaac Choi, Director of Taxation. We stand on our testimony for HB 1600 and the executive budget. The budget actually is just a restoration of the cuts that we were having, plus additional 8 bodies. As you know, tax compliance is getting harder and harder and harder, and we're just trying to restore the department to where it was before. I did submit testimony yesterday, which is pretty weird, but I think something you would like. We're asking for 35 vacant positions to be eliminated from the budget. Accuracy in the budget is a hobby of mine, and we found that these 35 positions are no longer needed. Actually, this elimination of these 35 positions is a testament to the prior directors who worked really, really hard to get the computer up and running. And we don't need these processing temporary positions anymore. So we're asking that, the budget will be corrected. And other than that, we thank you for the opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Department of Agriculture.
Aloha and good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, Chairperson, Hawaii Department of Ag. We support House Bill 1600. Like others before me, we're requesting respectfully for the restoration of funds for essential operations and personnel. And also critical for us is a change in the means of financing for positions in our plant industry division, along with consideration for the settlement of a pesticides violation for us to create a disposal program. So we're available to answer any questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up is Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, Mr. Nahopi.
Law Chair Luke and members of the Finance Committee, Mike Nahopi, Executive Director for the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission. Good to be back in this building. People must have missed me sitting on the benches.
Yeah.
I just wanted, on behalf of the commission, we are in support of this bill, especially for the funding in LNR 906 for the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission. I just want to make note that the request that we have in this measure is just to restore us back to where we were in 2018. The funding that this committee actually gave us in 2018, continuing on into 2019, that was eliminated, and one position was defunded and then eliminated. So we're asking for a comparable position to restore that, and especially for our cultural specialists. Kaho'olawe is unique because it's set aside for not only just conservation and restoration, but as a Native Hawaiian cultural reserve. And without having a person who specializes in Native Hawaiian cultural practices to be able to make determination what is appropriate for people to come or how to interact and how to integrate all those cultural values into our practices, we have a very difficult time. It relies upon myself doing that in addition coming here and doing these things. And this bill is just to restore us. It's separate from the other bill we heard earlier, which is trying to get us forward and moving into the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and honorable members of the Finance Committee. Jade Butay for Hawaii Department of Transportation. We stand on our submitted written testimony in strong support. Thank you for your consideration and support.
Thank you very much. Next up is He'e Coalition.
Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. My name is Shari Nakamura, Director of He'e Coalition, a community coalition supporting public education. We would like to stand on our written testimony in support of HB 1600, but we would like to highlight a few items. We advocate for restoring full funding for our public education system. Students have suffered academically, socially, and emotionally from disruptions resulting from the pandemic, with the greatest impact on our high-needs students. This is why we believe that priority should be given to full funding of EDN 100 or school-based budgeting and EDN 150 for special education, which are resources at the school level to support quality teaching and learning. We also advocate for extra support for our small and rural schools, which have historically not had consistent resourcing to meet the needs of their populations. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is DHHL. Chair Ayla.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee. William Ayla on behalf of the Department of Hawaiian Homelands and the Hawaiian Homes Commission. We stand on our testimony in support of House Bill 1600. I will point out the link in our written testimony that covers the obligation to make the request for the sufficient sums. It's clear. The budget, however, the budget included in the governor's supplemental budget request is an appropriate baseline given our current staff levels and funding. We are also most appreciative of the support given by the legislature to the Hawaiian Homes Department. Thank you, and I'll stand up for questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is DBED.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. It's good to see you all in person after 2 years. DBED stands on his written testimony. In addition to the testimony, the budget info briefing discussion we had, we stand on that. I just wanted to point out one thing. There was a governor's message 7 that restores funding for a secretary position for the Land Use Commission. So we ask for your consideration for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Stanford Car Development.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, committee members. My name is Kalapapa Robinson. I am Vice President of Development at Stanford Car Development, the project manager for the 820 Eisenberg Street project in partnership with DHHL. The great-great-grandson of Adelaide Stagbar, who owned and operated the bowling alley from its inception until her passing, and the grandson of a Native Hawaiian beneficiary. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm here on behalf of Stanford Car Development, the principal of Hale Mo'ili'ili, which is the developer of 820 Eisenberg. I'm here before you today to respectfully request an appropriation into the Rental Housing Revolving Fund in the amount of $41.5 million to support the redevelopment. We stand on our testimony, but I'd like to offer a few highlights. We stand on our written testimony, but I offer a few highlights. First, that affordable housing is a challenging endeavor. Its feasibility is influenced by a wave of integral yet separate components, not the least of which is funding. This appropriation is needed to provide the necessary equity gap financing to the DHHL project, and also to preserve the precious rental housing revolving fund monies in the coffers of HHFDC for other private projects. The allocation is critical because it will supply the project with the necessary gap financing so that we can leverage the state's 4% non-competitive low-income housing tax credits and the Hula May multifamily private activity bonds. The combination of these financing tools is allowing us to not only provide an opportunity for Native Hawaiian beneficiaries earning up to the 60% of the area median income, but also up to 100% in a mixed income project. Like any other rental housing revolving fund loan, this is a loan with principal and interest payments paid back to the state in the out of the net operating income from the project. Lastly, this project is important because it's a template for the future. There are other parcels in DHHL's portfolio which are not suitable for single family homesteading, and the success of this project is a model for the future, potentially even for my own native Hawaiian grandmother who currently lives in Las Vegas. We again thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up is Department of Labor.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the Committee on Finance, and Flora Eustaquio, Director, Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. I stand on a written testimony in strong support of House Bill 1600. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is National Federation of the Blind of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Let me just say that we're appearing here today not as representing the state or state employees, but just as representing the people. We depend on the services of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. 11 positions were unfunded last year. There may have been good reasons for that. Those reasons have gone away now that the pandemic is receding, and we need our people out there to be getting jobs, and vocational rehabilitation helps them get jobs. 4 of these 11 positions are at the Ho'opono Services for the Blind. We need to have those jobs filled. Hawaii sent back over $675,000, $1,000, not million, to the federal government. Last year, part of the reason for this was that there were unfunded positions in vocational rehabilitation. So by not funding the positions, we kind of helped the federal government. We didn't help the people of Hawaii. Mahalo for considering our need.
Thank you for being here. Next up is DeGray Vanderbilt.
Thank you, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and distinguished members of the Finance Committee. My name is DeGray Vanderbilt. I'm a founding member of Ka'uhana Kalapapa, which is currently in the process of building the Kalapapa Memorial, which will list the names of all 8,000 Hawaii citizens who were taken from their families and lives and sent to Kalapapa for the betterment of the greater society in their communities. I wasn't planning to testify today. I tried to put together some stuff real quickly, and I passed out to most of the Finance Committee members, except I didn't get to Rep. Ilakan's office or Rep. Martin or Rep. Peruso or Rep. Todd's office. My testimony from the WAM committee, which gives a little background on where we are on this wonderful project. The memorial, we would like the House to consider putting into the budget the $5 million for construction funding, which comes out to $650 per person of the 8,000 people that sacrificed their lives for the betterment of others. It's a dynamic history, Kalapapa is, that so many people don't know about. And we were authorized to develop the memorial at Kalapapa by the Kalapapa Memorial Act, which was signed into law by President Obama in 2009. Since that time, we've come a long way. We're a nonprofit. The organization was founded by the residents of Kalapapa, their descendants and longtime friends of the community. And so the 5 million is for the construction, and then we're raising another 5 million endowment to maintain the site, the 4 acres of site in perpetuity in a pristine condition, and also to continue our community outreach programs. We've reconnected over 900 families with their ohana at Kalapapa. In 2012, there were only 12 residents left. And that was the number of residents that were sent on the first ship to Kalapapa in 1866. So this is a dynamic history in Hawaii's history, and it's coming full circle now. And we'd like to get this memorial going. We've invested a lot of time and effort. I had put together, I just put the copy of my testimony to WHAM, which gives a lot of the background, and some of the professional organizations like G70, Munakio, Goodfellow Brothers, G70 International, and several other major organizations that have contributed so much to bring it to this point, plus the fundraising that we've done. And I included some renderings of the memorial, which has been praised statewide. And this is a statewide project, really, because people were sent from every island in Hawaii. From Kauai in Ni'ihau, about 1,500, 30 plus of which came from Ni'ihau, 2,500 roughly from Oahu, 2,000 each from Maui County and the Big Island. And it's just, as I said, an amazing history of people that were dealt a bad hand, but came together and contributed so much. And if you go to the Ka'ohana website, you'll see we've gotten 6 historic preservation awards from Historic Hawaii Foundation for our work at Kalapapa. And we've just expended a tremendous amount of time, effort, and money to get it to this point. And I just want to have a quick quote from a letter that Helen Keller sent to the people of Kalapapa in 1960. And she said, "For many years, I have read with affection about you, and my heart goes out to you in this message. You are among the bravest people whom I know." And then Bishop Silva wrote, "The memorial will serve as a kind of communal tombstones that all buried on the peninsula, whether in marked or unmarked graves, could be remembered. It would serve as a communal tombstone for the thousands of people, more than 90% of whom are Native Hawaiians, to ensure that they are an integral part of the history that they helped to create." So there is less than 1,000 marked graves at Kalapapa. And so this would have the names of all 8,000 people. So descendants could come and they could do, like you see so many at the Vietnam Wall, they could touch the wall, they could see the names of Ohana. And hopefully in 50 years, there'll be a file on every one of the 8,000 people sent there, so they won't be lost in history. And I appreciate this consideration, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and excuse the hat, but that's in honor of my good friend Boogie Kahili Hiva, who passed away this year. We were both going to turn 80 this year. He didn't make it, but he's on our board. He's one of the 3 residents on our board. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Okay, that's all the testifiers who signed up, but did I miss anyone? Anyone else want to testify in person? If not, questions, members? Any questions? If not, let's recess for decision making. Aloha Committee on Finance will reconvene for decision-making on the executive budget. It is House Bill 1600. First up, I wanted to thank all the departments for your work. You know, coming out of the pandemic, and we're still struggling with that. You know, the last 2 years, I know many of the departments really worked hard above and beyond to take care of the needs of the state and take care of the needs of the community. So our heartfelt gratitude goes out to every department, whether you're here in person or on Zoom. Many thanks to all of you folks and the work that you folks have done, and the community out there as well. You know, it was a tough 2 years, and we dealt with major budget shortage and difficulties in your personal lives as well. As we come out of this together, we're hoping to build a stronger, better Hawaii together. And we just wanted to thank the residents for their help during the last 2 years. This year paints a very different picture as opposed to the last 2 years. You know, it's amazing that 2 years ago we were struggling with a potential $3 billion deficit in the biennium, and every department had substantial cuts, and you know, it was with you know, sadness, and you know, it was with discomfort and struggles that we had to cut into many of the services in many of the departments. And but thanks to the help of the federal government, and thanks to the help of the community, and for this committee working together, we were able to restore some of the funding and programs, largely from ARPA funds and COVID relief funds. Now we're at a point where the federal funding is limited, and the amounts are pretty much all spent. So now it's at a point that we will need to restore many of the services and many of the programs through general funds and taxpayers' dollars. So we are at this point taking a closer look at going forward. What are some of the essential services that we need to not just fund, but what are some of the programs that we need to boost up at this point to shore up as we build a stronger base for the future. So with that, I wanted to just give you some of the highlights of what is in the budget. So with your indulgence, you know, I will be reading through some of the things that we have added. For the most part, I think we took a different approach this year, only because of the severe cuts that were made to the departments. Even if they were replaced by ARPA funds, you know, if we had funded it through ARPA funds, then we took a look at it as something that we would have wanted to do the last 2 years. It just that we didn't have the funding to do. So we took the approach that in as much as we can, we will restore. There were many situations where we went above and beyond what the governor asked for, only because we saw many needs within the departments and the community. So in that sense, you know, the details of the budget will be posted as soon as the House takes its final decision and final vote next week. But in the meantime, we will work closely with the departments and work with you to let you know where some of the areas that we felt could be funded more. And then we will continue to work with you folks on that. So starting with Department of Agriculture, one of the focus this year was really attention on invasive species. And in as much as Department of Agriculture and Department of Land and Natural Resources in the past have done a significant amount of work on invasive species, we felt that it really needed to do more. So for Department of Agriculture, we are providing $425,000 to not just battle pests such as coffee berry borers, coffee berry borer beetles, but also the spittlebug and Japanese beetle infestation. I think those are important. In addition to that, we will be providing $900,000 to assist the ag industries, especially with the increasing axis deer population. That is a huge problem, and we will be providing $900,000. When we get to DLNR, we will also be highlighting some of the invasive species initiatives, such as rapid Ohia death, which was not in the governor's budget, but that has been a significant priority for the legislature. We wanted to make sure that we include that as well. So we will be covering that in DLNR. In addition to the invasive species and the $900,000 for the axis deer population, we will also be providing $224,588 to fund 1 economist position and 2 surveys to double local fruit production within USDA, and $605,803 to fund 2 positions and security guard services for ADC. What I am reading is not complete list. We're just touching upon highlights, so don't be alarmed that that's the only thing we're covering. And we will, since you guys are in person, and I don't mean for the other departments to run over right away. If you're in person here, we can talk to you about further details since you're here. So with the Department of Accounting and General Services, we will be providing about $2 million for modernization of the state financial system and $500,000 for our creative. Okay, so let me step back. For the State Foundation on Culture and the Arts, with the assistance of the Chair of Culture and the Arts, we have put in significant amount for them to do many of these programs. So $500,000 for a creative grant program, $200,000 for artist fellowship program, $200,000 for international sister state relations. And especially during the pandemic, Bishop Museum has gotten a lot of, had to deal with a lot of the problems during COVID because the revenues weren't coming in. And Bishop Museum is our only state museum, so we felt they needed significant assistance. So we will be putting in an additional $4.5 million in support for the mission of Bishop Museum. We feel that during this time, supporting culture and the arts is significant, and so this is the House's commitment to provide those needs. Under Department of Attorney General's Office, we will be providing about $328,000 for the Special Investigation and Prosecuting Unit. For the AG's office to continue to look at, providing better public confidence in government. And this is something that I think is really needed at this point. So we'll be providing that. We'll also be providing $1 million to establish 10 new Deputy Attorney General positions across all departments to deal with increased workloads. About $114,000 to establish victim witness support to combat human trafficking. Under DBED, we'll be providing about $650,000 for the Hawaii State Energy Office to mitigate climate change and increase alternative energy sources. About $196,000 for 2 real estate positions at HTDC. We have, because the amounts that are requested in DBED, especially for manufacturing grant and SBIR, because the amounts that were in the bills were higher amounts, so we took it out of the budget so we can have further discussion on those programs. For budget and finance, $33 million in matching fund for the expansion of broadband services, $367,000 for investment database and informational storage system for ERS. And $591,000 for 2 investment specialists for management of ERS and 21 for the ERS's $21 billion portfolio. $335 million for pre-funding. So this is our continued effort to bring down the unfunded liability by providing this year's OPEB payments. For DCCA, $546,000 and 8 positions to assist professional and vocational licensing with processing of applicants. $243,000 and 2 positions to assist Division of Financial Institution with small dollar lending regulations. $121,000 and 1 position to assist Division of Financial Institution with non-depository trust fund regulation. For Department of Defense, again, we have focused on the invasive species issues by providing $645,000 to clear albizia trees surrounding the state veterans cemetery. In addition to that, $125,000 to obtain an additional excavator and utility tractor for the state veterans cemetery for groundskeeping. And $99,000 to establish 1 planner who will provide threat assessment and violence prevention strategies for Office of Homeland Security. For Department of Education, we will be restoring about $100 million for the Department of Education, which was cut during the pandemic. $14 million for positions which were left unfunded. $32 million to address shortfall differentials to retain recruit teachers for special education, Hawaiian language immersion, and hard to fill staff. $1.1 million for classroom supplies, instructions. So this is something that the House added. So in addition to some of these needs, we felt we can help teachers by providing substantial amount for classroom supplies and instructional materials. About $1 million for 17 positions to make the pilot special education teacher mentor program permanent. $500,000 for a commercial enterprise to allow high school to expand and invest in their commercial enterprises. $2.4 million for 18 positions to establish a new nursing section for DOE to coordinate and provide clinical supervision for schools. $300,000 to provide support for students in residential facilities in Hawaii. $6.3 million for new equipment, new classrooms and school buildings across the state. $900,000 for monitoring and reporting of underground injection wells at school. I think those were primarily on the Big Island, right? I think. And $1 million to deploy a sensor network in air-conditioned classroom to optimize classroom conditions for students and staff. $500,000 to mitigate and remove heavily contaminated soil. Oh, this is for the East Hawaii schools. $1 million to install security cameras at 11 libraries and $750,000 for public libraries to purchase digital and physical materials for community use. The part that was not funded in Department of Education is the somewhat 60-something million dollars, which I believe the governor and Budget and Finance to put in to meet with MOE. And as we round out the budget at the end of the year, we will be making additional adjustment to meet the MOE. So we are assuming that as opposed to 60-something million dollars, because of the large amount that we are planning to commit to DHHL, the corresponding amount to DOE will be substantially more than 60. So we will continue to work with you folks and figuring out what the MOE obligation is. For the Office of Governor, we are reinstating the $288,000 for their policy office. For DHHL, In the DHHL budget, the department asked for $5 million, but since we're gonna be giving $600 million, we decided not to do the $5 million. But instead, because we're giving $600 million for homestead development, one of the things that we heard time and time again was that the homesteads also need services too. So we will be providing an additional $10 million for homestead services for you to work with different homesteads to take care of some of their needs. For Department of Human Services, we will be providing $500,000 in additional funding for rental assistance services program, $150,000 for contract at HYCF for mental health treatment, $6 million for TANF to procure innovative after-school programs, $1.4 million for exit retention bonuses to help families successfully exit TANF, $9.9 million for home and community-based services. And I wanted to go back and talk about child welfare services, and the issues with families under the jurisdiction of child welfare services has been highlighted several times during the last, in the last several months and throughout the years. We have worked with DHS to find a way to provide them more support and how we can, how that will translate for the protection of children under the state jurisdiction. So with that, we will be providing 48 positions and also providing additional staff training and vehicles and equipment to support child welfare services, and the total amount is close to $3 million. I think as the House is committed to working with DHS Child Welfare Services to ensure the protection of kids under the state's jurisdiction, and we're hoping that this will help and we will continue to work with them. For many years, the Medicaid reimbursement under DHS has not increased, and because of that, we felt this is a year for us to look at many programs. So one of them was for family planning services. Family providers providing family planning services have not gotten Medicaid increase in Medicaid reimbursement for decades, and so we'll be providing $610,000 to do Medicaid adjustments. In addition to that, we are also looking at areas such as postpartum expansion from 2 months to 12 months. In this budget, we have just put a placeholder knowing that those are moving, but we are hopeful that at the end of conference, we will be incorporating that into the budget so that it will be easier for us to calculate and deal with the MOE. The other area that the House is committed to doing is something more than what the what was provided in the governor's budget for reinstatement of adult dental. The option one presented in the governor's budget, I think the members agree that is too minimal. And so we are looking at something additional, something more than the option one provided in the budget. So we will be having further discussion with DHS, and we have put a placeholder for that service in the budget, but as the bills go through towards the end, we are looking at incorporating that benefit into the budget as well. For Department of Human Resource Development, $283,000 for a new web-based workers' compensation claims management system. For Department of Health, we will be reappropriating $9.6 million in cost saving achieved through a temporary increase in FMAP for individuals with developmental disabilities in order to reinvest in home and community-based services. And around $60,000 to restore funding for one communication access specialist whose primary responsibilities include credentializing sign language interpreters and communication access for state programs and services. And about $200,000 for 2 chemist positions and funds for supplies for state drug and alcohol toxicology lab. One of the things that the House will be putting in is about $1.2 million specifically to assist the Big Island ambulance units. Only because of the distance that the Big Island ambulances have to travel, we found that the ambulances on the Big Island compared to other islands have been substantially more rundown, and because of that, we will be providing the $1.2 million for Big Island ambulances. The other thing that we have found is that the long-term care ombudsman, there's only, I believe, 2. There's 2 long-term care ombudsmen. Yeah, 2 long-term care ombudsmen to deal with the inspection of long-term care facilities throughout the islands, and that has not been sufficient. So in this budget, we will be providing 5 long-term care ombudsmen, 1 additional on each island. On the Big Island, it will be 1 on the east side and 1 on the west side, and that will help the ombudsman's office with their workload. Lastly, Office of Language Access provided substantial services to help interpretive services and translation services. And this is a vulnerable population who needed a lot of help during the pandemic, especially in trying to figure out and maneuver around, okay, what are some of the mandates and how they can get services. So we will be providing 1 program specialist and funds to OLA. For Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, $235,000 to fund 2 elevator inspectors and an online scheduling system, $321 million for unemployment insurance benefit payment program, and $152,000 to fund 5 positions for Office of Community Services to help with the grant and aid process. For Department of Land and Natural Resources, $895,000 and 7 new land agent positions across the state to reduce the backlog of overdue land and easement inspections, $129,000 for 2 new aquatic biology positions to restart the marine aquaculture program and manage the coral program and nursery. $1 million in additional funds for first responder overtime helicopter contracts, repair of firefighting equipment for the Native Resources and Fire Protection Program. And as I stated before, the House ads will be $1.7 million for rapid OHIA death response and $1.5 million for additional funds for Hawaii Invasive Species Council. We always seem to be behind when we deal with invasive species, and we want to get ahead of it. So we will be providing additional money for them to tackle invasive species. In addition to that, we will be providing $347,000 in salary increases for 17 historic preservation positions for recruitment and retention of specialized talent, and $614,000 and 14 new positions for Historic Preservation Division to handle workforce workload increases. I think this is something that Chair Case mentioned. In addition to that, $50,000 for creation of rustic parking area and trail maintenance, and $500,000 in additional funding for operation and expenses for CURT. I think it also has some positions as well. And $2.3 million to restore operating and personnel reduction to the department that was realized in FY21. We will also be providing $12 million in increased ceiling for state parks. In addition to that, $1.2 million for 28 positions for state parks, and that will help with tourism management. Moving on to Department of Public Safety, $17 million to restore funding to positions that were unfunded due to the pandemic, $155,000 to add 4 positions to assist with recruiting and hiring to lower vacancy rates in the departments, $320,000 to add 6 clinical psychologists to provide evening and weekend psychology services for inmates suffering mental health crisis, $870,000 for 16 registered nurses to expand 24-hour nursing services. And this is something that the House added. We will be providing $5 million for re-entry program and support services at the Women's Community Correctional Centers Intake Center. We found that 50% of the inmates, there's 50% recidivism rate, so that out of the 200 women housed at Women's Correctional, about 100 return. And so we're hoping that some type of a re-entry program and support services will reduce the recidivism rate at Women's Correction. For Department of Taxation, $6.2 million for completion of tax system modernization program. And there are others, but I didn't want to read all of them. So Chair Choi can talk to us after. Department of Transportation, I'm not going to read through all of it. I would say for the most part, many of your requests got funded because we understand, some of the needs. So including the wiki buses to replace the aging buses at fleet at DKI. Many of the utilities and obligated electrical costs we funded, and the GIS system at the highways, and $800,000 for purchase a new mobile scanner. So we can discuss with DOT after. For the University of Hawaii, lastly, we will be restoring $42 million of reductions that we saw throughout the campuses last year. In addition to that, we are providing $4.8 million for the Promise program expansion for the community colleges. This will serve another 2,164 students. The Promise program at the community colleges have been one of the most successful programs, and we don't want finances to be a barrier to education, so we will be providing this additional amount to the community colleges. In addition to that, we also want to expand the Promise program to the 4-year colleges. So this budget puts in $19.3 million for Promise programs for UH Manoa, Hilo, West Oahu. And this will help serve 4,882 students. In addition to that, during the pandemic, I think athletics have greatly been impacted only because a lot of the athletic program depend on revenues. The result of that was that it impacted substantially more on Title IX programs. And as the anniversary of Title IX comes in, we want to make sure that Title IX programs are not cut. So we will be providing $12.4 million for Manoa and $1.4 million for UH Hilo to support athletics and Title IX programs. In addition to that, $1.8 million to expand JAPSIM's graduate residency programs for the neighbor island, and $1.7 million for nursing clinical instructor lecturers, $580,000 for improvements to Ernst Theater at UH Manoa, $557,000 and 4 positions for special education instruction and administrative support, $190,000 and 2 positions to kickstart the aviation program at UH Hilo. And this is something that the House added. 2 years ago, we made a commitment to expand preschool for the entire state. And one of the things that we really need is immersion school teaching pathway, and we work closely with Imiloa to establish that. So in this budget, we are providing $10 million and 14 positions for the Imiloa Astronomy Center for them to establish a immersion school teaching pathway. In addition to that, $282,000 and 5 positions for additional creative media programs at West Oahu. 146,000 and 3 positions for Maui Food Innovation Center. 339,000 and 7 positions for Culinary Institute of the Pacific at Kapiolani Colleges. $1.5 million and 7 positions for computer science engineering positions and establishment of information technology internship program at Manoa and Hilo. And lastly, $38 million for various repairs and maintenance projects, including upgrades to the Chung Athletic Complex. The governor's budget was for general funds, it was about $8.4 million. The House draft contains $8.3 million. And part of the reason is some of the big ticket items are not included in this budget because it becomes a discussion point. One of them is HTA. The other one is HSSC. And we also left off the $63 million or somewhat for EDN MOE because we understand that amount is going to change. So because of that, it looks like the House draft is a little under the governor's request, but in addition to some of the things that we stated, the House draft has other significant adds that the governor's budget did not. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to Vice Chair just to see if he wants to add things that he worked on under the CIP budget.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. First of all, thank you for you allowing me to work on this budget once again, as well as the members of the Finance Committee. Very briefly, the overall general obligation bond appropriation for over the biennium was $2.343 million, and all means of financing about $4.8 billion. So, you know, in the for general accounting and for accounting and general services, what we did was over the biennium, we put $42.5 million in for them. Oh, I'm sorry, that's for the Department of Agriculture. For the DAGs, it's about just shy of $60 million. DBED, there is $550 million, which includes $350 million for a new stadium at Halawa, $10 million for the redevelopment master plan at the Stadium Development District. And we put $41.5 billion for DHHL for the into the rental housing revolving fund for the project that was talked about here. And with that, under DHHL, we also added about $30 million for lot development. And so over the biennium, for DHHL, aside from the bill that's moving, we put $129.5 million in for over the biennium for DHHL. In budget and finance is about $115.4 million for broadband. For defense, they're just shy over the biennium of about $30 million. Department of Education, we put $90 million in for deferred maintenance, $15.1 million for health and safety improvements, $29.8 million for support gender equity and ADA improvements. But over the biennium for the Department of Education is $804.8 million in capital improvement projects for the Department of Education. Libraries is $7 million for support health and safety projects, $5 million for network and related infrastructure statewide. For Department of Human Services, we put $10 million for the renovation and improvement of public housing, as well as we did Department of Hawaiian Homeland already. Department of Health, I'll just say that over the biennium, they will be receiving 165.3, just shy of that, $1 million into their capital budget. Department of Land and Natural Resources, just shy of about $125 million. Public safety, we'll be getting about 400, just shy of $405 million, which will include $20 million for repair and maintenance, $7 million to address ADA concerns, $3 million for deferred maintenance, $4 million for repair, renovation and improvements of Laumaka, and $21 million for management and IT infrastructure improvements. It does not include $15 million for a new jail. And Department of Transportation, over the biennium, they will be getting just shy of $2.3 billion for highways, airports, and harbors. The University of Hawaii will be receiving about $361 million over the biennium. Let's see if there's anything interesting there. Yeah, we'll just go with that. Yeah, and then I did say I was going to mention this. There's $1 million in for pedestrian and traffic safety for Queen Street and Waimanu Street. That was in the news yesterday to address the traffic problems. And that's highlights.
Okay, with that, any discussion? But thank you very much for the members for your due diligence in going through the budget details that the governor submitted. I think, you know, we can say that we're very proud of the budget that we are presenting today, and we will continue to work with the departments. At the end of, unlike in the past where we left many of the bills moving at the same time, I think this year we will be incorporating a lot of the bills into the budget because it will help us sort out the MOE for both DOE and UH, and it will make it simpler. With that, we also wanted to thank the departments for your work and working with our budget analysts to sort out many of these questions. And thank you very much, Vice Chair. I had to fill the role really quickly and double duty, Vice Chair and also CIP. So my gratitude to you. If there's no other questions, we're ready to vote. So House Bill 1600 will be passed with amendments. Please take the roll.
Okay, members, we're voting on House Bill 1600 with amendments. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Representatives Bronco.
Aye.
Eli.
Aye.
Hope.
Aye.
Iligan.
Aye.
Kobayashi.
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Kishimoto. Aye. Caruso.
Aye.
Sayama.
Aye.
Cam.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Ballberger.
Aye.
Excuse. Adopted.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will provide the CIP worksheet to the departments, and we will email them to you. And the members, we will give you hard copies before you leave if you don't have them already. And you also have the budget highlights. So with that, hearing is adjourned.